Is the gospel about the glory of Christ, or is the glorious gospel about Christ? In 2 Corinthians 4:4, here you have an example that you simply have to make a choice. You can't go both directions. So in 2 Corinthians 4, Paul is talking about that the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers so that they cannot, interesting articular infinitive with a preposition, indicating result, so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image, the exact likeness of God. And what is interesting is this right here, the gospel of the glory of Christ. And you have to make a decision. Either that's what Paul means, the gospel of the glory. So the gospel is about the glory that belongs to Christ. Or doxes is an attributive genitive, also called an Hebraic genitive, and it would mean that the glorious gospel of Christ. Now, no matter what direction you go with that, both options are on the table grammatically, and you simply have to make a choice. And it's interesting, as you go through the translations, almost everyone just says the glory of Christ, ESV, CSB, the glory of Christ, NRSV, the glory of Christ. Only the Net Bible translates it as an attributive genitive, the glorious gospel, and then footnotes that it's been translated as an attributive genitive. The main thing I wanted to point out, though, that here's a situation where you have to interpret. You have to choose the gospel of the glory of Christ, or you say the glorious gospel of Christ. What finalized it for me was 2 verses later, he talks about the knowledge of the glory of God. And you can see in my translation, I've been inconsistent. I said the glorious knowledge of God, but that's a little more difficult to process. Most people go the knowledge of God's glory. The NIV taking it as an objective genitive. It's the glory that God received. The NASB lives it indefinite, the glory of God, ESV. God's glory, again, an objective genitive, CSB, glory of God, NRSV, the glorious knowledge, again, taking it consistently, as it does up in verse 4, as an Hebraic genitive. So is Paul talking about the gospel of the glory that Christ possesses, or is he talking about the glorious gospel, which is about Jesus Christ? And probably I'm going to have to change this in my own translation. It needs to be consistent. Either it's the glorious knowledge of God, or it's the knowledge of God's glory. And certainly it is an objective genitive. It's the glory that God receives. All translation is interpretive, and sometimes you cannot straddle the fence.